Hey there. Thanks for listening to the next lesson in our HTML Basics series. And this one is going to go over just some better layout techniques and some different properties that we might be able to use. And this time I'm going to incorporate the developer tools, which we talked about in the last lesson. So one thing, this is our website that we had up to date if you've been following along. This is the HTML code if you want to pause it and catch up by typing that in. We'll be changing this. And this is our CSS file. This is the top of it that we've been working with. And this is the bottom if you want to pause it and put that into your Notepad++ to catch up. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to our HTML and just get rid of some things that were for example only and won't really serve us for what we're going to be moving forward with. I'm going to get rid of the H group. I don't usually use those too often. I'm going to get rid of the H2. So now we just have the H1 and our nav in there. So I'm going to equalize this equal with the nav and our header. And I'm going to also create a new div around our content. And I think what I'll do is call this div, I'll call it an ID this time because it'll be only one on each page. I'll call this div content wrapper. So then it differentiates, since all this was content, and I'm going to tab that in to be wrapped inside here. Now that puts all the content on an equal level as the header. And we have to be careful of balancing everything here with the div. I put it in front of this content and behind it. So now it's containing all of these things. Likewise, the header is containing all of these things, making the content wrapper and the header at the same level. Or the word I'll start using is they're siblings, because they're siblings of the same parent. Their parent is the body. You see the body here? We can collapse that in Notepad++. A child of the body is the header. Another child is the content wrapper div, and they are children, and the header and the div content wrapper are siblings to each other. So that's important in keeping some terminology up to date for here on forward. This will help not for a while until we get into JavaScript more and maybe some other CSS rules and such, but it's good terminology to use. And I want you to make sure that you keep these balanced. That's why keeping them indented is very important. Alright, so we'll put some more content in here later too. I'm going to change this more to a working title, our web page, and we're going to be adding in more elements too for list items. Alright, so that's enough for our content document, which is the HTML. The HTML is the content, and the styling all happens in the CSS file. It's important to know that they're separated. Content belongs in one document, and all the styling information is independent in a different document. So that's a paradigm to keep in mind. And then I also want to make sure I can get rid of this background. I was using that for an example. We don't need that anymore. The width, I think I'm just going to put that at 100% to reset it kind of back to something. Height is fine. Let's see, what else can I take out for now. Let's just do some as we go on. So I'm going to go back to our document, refresh that one. We have a little bit better looking page here. But what I want to do is sometimes there is, we used to do this on websites, and I still do it, is create a wrapper div here too. A div, so I have a div up there. I'm going to put a div down here, and they're equal. I'm going to indent all of this. So what I'm going to do is hit tab, and make sure your tab is set up for 4 spaces. A tab should be that. And this div is also going to have an ID equal to container. And that's just going to be an all overarching container for all of the contents, because then we don't have to mess with the body. We can do different things for the body and different things for the container. And I'll show you why we do this. I'll do that actually next year. So we want to keep this in some sort of order. We have some resets towards the top. We have our body tag, which comes next, and then let's do our container. So now we use a pound sign because it's the ID. The name of the selector is container. And what I'm going to do is give this a width. Let's just go with a width of 600 for now. And 600 is a good amount to be small. It's not taking up the whole screen. I'm going to soon be teaching more about responsive and adaptive website design, but I don't want to overwhelm you if you're a beginner. So this is a fixed width of 600 pixels. So let's put that in there. Go back to our website, refresh it. We won't see a change because I want to make the change in Inspector. And if you remember, it's right-clicking on the viewport area, hitting Inspect Element, and our Inspector Developer Tools come up. And I wanted to do it in here to show you how it's good to diagnose. You can see that we have a width of 600 pixels. That's the blue area on the left, and then the orangish area on the right is just what's left over. So we have a width of 600, but what happens when I create a margin I type margin and then colon, and then it hits me over to the value. I type 0 because I don't need a top and bottom margin right now, but I type in auto. And auto is a property I didn't tell you about before, or a value I didn't tell you about before, but it is set on here. You remember that if there's two values for the margin property, the first one is the top and bottom, the second one is the left and right, and if it's auto, that means it auto figures out what the margin should be and it centers it, and that's already looking nicer already. So we have margin 0 auto, and I wanted to do it in there because I wanted to show you how you can use the developer tools to instantly get feedback on what you're doing. But of course, for it to stick, we're going to have to go back and actually type that in here. Margin 0 auto, semicolon, save, and go and refresh. Nothing should change because that property was already specified from our inspector. So now we have a center document, and you can see again when I bring up the inspector, there's our body and there's our container. And I didn't want to do that to the body because, well, I'll show you why. If we put a width on the body of 600, margin 0 auto, it does the same thing, but we lose any ability to put things outside of that for later on in case we wanted to do that. And I might, and I usually do in some cases. So that's why this is a little safer way to have that container, have it all be in the container. I'm going to refresh it. Refreshing it resets the inspector. I'll close the inspector now so we can get a full view. And it's already looking better. Okay, and one property I didn't show you before was the text align. I'm kind of introducing these to you slowly because there are so many, and we'll keep adding in new things every time. But the text align is text hyphen align and colon and then center. And different values could be left or right. You can see the instant feedback we get here by typing in an inspector. And right but center, whoops, let's try that again. Text. This is the problem with using this inspector. Sometimes you have to use the right key commands, otherwise it acts funny on you. So I typed in text hyphen align, type colon, and it pushes it over to the value, and then center. And what that does is center that H1, and this only works on line items, so that is H headings and paragraphs and list items. So I have you can see the difference, and this is where it's nice in Inspector. You can see if you want to keep that or not by toggling it on and off with this checkbox. So yeah, we'll center that for now. I think that looks good. So what I'm going to do is Sometimes I'm going to retype it out in the CSS file. Sometimes I'll copy it. Sometimes I like to type it out to show you the value of doing it. It's probably good for you to type them out in here. Type them out so you get the practice of doing so. Enter and then paste and then save. And I'm going to take that off just to show you. We refresh the page and it centers that. So now we have our web page kind of looking nice there. Okay, the next thing we're going to tackle is this navigation here. It's pretty traditional at this point in web design history to have horizontal navigation. So let's do that. Again, I'll right click on here and choose inspect element, and we're going to do it all in the inspector just so that you can see how this works. I use it all the time. I think it's the best way, so that's how I'm going to teach you. And we're going to handle these list items in here. So what I'm going to do is click in here, and I don't want to click in, well actually I'm going to click in here. Or this is the user agent style sheet. I'm going to click not in here because this is also tackling the H2 which you did before, which I'll probably go take that away soon enough. But in here what I'm going to do is type in a width for these, and let's just start out with 100 and see how that works, pixels. And we really won't see much of it, although you can see here that it shows you how wide that is. But what I'm going to type in is a float left, and that's a very mysterious property that was developed along with the very early HTML. But it's something that what it does is it floats everything left. Instead of making it flow in the document as taking up 100% of the width as before, it breaks that and lets the next item float alongside of it for the width, all the width of it. So 100 pixels, and the container of it, the next one up, is the header, which is 600 pixels wide, or a container which is 600 pixels wide. So essentially we could fit in 6 of these, since they're 100, before it will break into the next line. So floating is a nice way to have it organically just float with the page. But for now, I'll be talking about the float soon enough, or a little later in different lessons. But for now, just know that in order to get horizontal navigation to work, you have to use float left. And that's pretty much it. And we'll add another navigation item. But what I also want to show you is a lot of times we also take away these bullets. And what's nice about this inspector too is you can start to learn properties this way, because I started typing, I was going to go after list style type. I typed in list, and I can hit down and then hit enter to select that, and that gives me the one I want. And what I'm going to put in here is none. Oh yeah, and you can see all of the values that you can pick for this. So that's a good way to start learning values and properties. But what I'm going to choose is none. And watch, as soon as I type the E for none, or it's already done it, the bullet has gone away. So we're going to remember this. List style type none for the UL item. And I'm just applying it to the element style right now, though, so specifically this element. But I'm going to go over to here and near the top, because this is going to be a universal rule. I'm going to type UL, my brackets, and paste in my list style type none. Save it and go back to the document and refresh it just so you can see. It's going to go back to the vertical navigation, but the bullets are gone. And then you probably are ahead of me already, but for my list item, I'm going to type in a width, and 100 worked for now. It might have to be raised if one of the navigation items is longer, but for now it's going to be long enough. And this is, if you did a design in Photoshop, you would know the widest width you would need to have from that. And that's a lesson I'm going to do in the future, is converting a PSD Photoshop document into an HTML one. But once you know all of this lesson, it should be pretty easy. And then if you remember, of course, the float left. And save that, go back to our web page and hit enter, and now we have our two elements floating left One thing I think I'm going to do too is you can see that inside of the container it's to the left of it. So like we learned just recently, we could do text align colon center, and that'll get them in the center. So I'm going to copy that. Whoops, I missed part of it. Copy that. Go back to Notepad++, enter, paste, save. And the last thing I want to do on here is add another item on here. So I'm going to take this, copy it, and go after, or I put it in between here, paste, and we have a third item now. We have 3 items, and we don't have our page created yet, so I'm going to resort this back to a pound, and I'm going to take away our type because we don't need that effect. I'm going to make this one text. We talked about that before. And it is not going to be about me, but it is going to be a different thing. Maybe we'll put portfolio or cat photos. This is going to be cat photo site. So we're going to make a page for all the cat photos, and that will go there. I'm going to save this and go back to our page, and lo and behold, our next item comes on. And I think that's enough for this lesson. We're going to address more things in the content area, tweak this navigation a little bit, and start adding more content in the next lesson. Thank you.